It's about 31,000 and stationaries in it.
Maybe I'm looking over 100,000 for back to school.
Downtown Kingston is a place of choice for many looking to get a deal on school supplies. But even then, some parents are finding it difficult.
Right now, a voucher me have one voucher me have, I go buy some textbook, some writing book. That's all I can do.
And from out of money to out of the country. Reports suggested that as many as 400 teachers left the island to take up jobs overseas.
People are so harsh and cruel to us, even for some of us who want to find a better standard of living. And we choose to go elsewhere. We are being criticized and ridiculed.
Jamaica must make itself more competitive for the retention of our skills.
But the Education Ministry revealed on Monday that the figure is way lower than predicted. Education Minister Favour Williams told the country that 167 teachers resigned over the summer break.
These resignations we know will impact staffing for the new school year as they are so close to the start of the new school year.
On top of that, the government is already putting pressure on school administrators to get things right this academic year. For instance, enforcing the no fees policy.
Children going back to school in September being told you can't come to school because your parents didn't pay the school fee. That should not and will not be allowed to happen in Jamaica.
So, where do we go from here? Class is now in session.
Good evening, I'm Herman Green, and welcome to the RJR Gleaner Townhall on the education sector as we get ready for back to school. A special welcome to those of you joining on JNN, Power 106 FM, online at onespotmedia.com, Gleaner Online, and TVJ's YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. Now, just a reminder, this is all about you. So we'll be taking as many questions and comments as possible from our live audience here. And those of you at home, you can follow the conversation by tweeting along with us. The hashtag TVJ Back to School, or WhatsApp us at 876-381-0072. Now, joining me here on the panel for this evening's discussion, first of all, to my immediate left, Dr. Cassan Troop. She's the acting education officer in the Education Ministry. Then next to her, we have Linvern Wright. He's the president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools. To his left, there is LaSonia Harrison. She's a newly elected president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. And we also have Esther Tyson. And she's an education consultant and also an author. Ladies, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. All right, good. Now, first of all, as we just heard from Kalisha, we have just over a week to go before the start of school. And there are several issues plaguing the sector. We are still in a pandemic, monkeypox is here, and the current passing, or rather the current pressing issue, which seems to only be getting worse, teacher migration. Let me start with some opening comments from our panelists. I'll start with you, Dr. Troop. From the Education Ministry standpoint, how do you see the new school year?
Thank you for having me, Herman. The ministry is really optimistic about what will happen come the 5th of September. We have been here before. We have done this. Our principals are aware of what to do. They are accustomed to getting school ready. Many of our principals are doing staff development now. They are planning for orientation. And so they are in that kind of mode. So we are very optimistic knowing that the know-how resides with our principals and we are ready to give them the support.
Okay, to rest with the principals, we have the president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools. Mr. Wright, how prepared are you? Opening comments.
Well, we are prepared in terms of our understanding of what it is to be done, as the Chief Education Officer says. I know we're anticipating challenges, but the fact is that because of that experience that many members have, I think we're doing the kinds of things like doing the repairs, doing the professional development, doing the kind of work that will orientate students into school. It's going to be hugely difficult just after COVID, but I think we understand the magnitude of the challenge we have to deal with, and I think the kind of work necessary to ensure that students are back and ready is something that many of us are prepared to do. Issues in terms of funding are things that face us every single year, you know. Just as back to school is a cycle, matters of funding is a cycle. There are some things we continue to play politics with, we continue to play with, but I think we usually get through to do the kind of thing we have to do to ensure that school runs in the best interest of our
We'll be
children.
getting several questions just to hear how prepared you are. New JTA President, Lasonia Harrison, your opening comments.
Good evening, Mr. Green and panelists, and to Jamaica and the hardworking teachers of this nation. Education is not only right, it is a social good, and it is one that is in need of resourcing. It will take a partnership to do that, and certainly I can concur that we anticipate that there will be some turbulent times ahead. We have gone through turbulent times before. We are seeing some indicators that, you know, they're saying to us that we need to really pay attention to what is on the ground, how we treat with our practitioners, provide them with the tools that they need. It was quite instructive to me when I saw your opening
clip by
clip.
Kalisha, yes.
Yes, that she was actually writing on a chalkboard with chalk. That was quite instructive. And so even as we prepare and we certainly would like to move along, we are reminded of the various challenges that remain in our schools, and chief among them, the resourcing of our schools, be it human, infrastructural, and financial. It takes cash to care, and so we really need that kind of holistic partnership if we're going to change the narrative that exists in education, and really if we're going to provide education for all children.
Okay, the rest of the panel seems quite prepared for the challenges ahead. Ms. Tyson, you heard the challenges both in our clip, and you've heard how prepared they are.
Yes.
You've been here before. How do you feel about going back to school? Back to school come September.
I'm not going back.
I know. How do you feel about going back?
My concern is for the children. I'm concerned that we need to change how we do things because we are in a totally different setting. So where we have, you have a structure, you going to school and the children probably have orientation and then teachers start to teach. The point is our children are in a different place, many of them. Many of them have not yet caught up with what they have lost, the learning loss over the time of COVID. So I am concerned that we are going to do things differently. We are going to make sure that our children, we understand where our children are in terms of their cognitive development, in terms of their social development, their emotional development, that we are doing activities that will inform us about that, and that we will put measures in place to address those, and we won't just be doing school as usual.
Okay, good. All right, well, as I said before, this entire program is about the questions that you have for our panelists here. We go to our first break, but when we get back, we'll start those questions. You don't want to miss it.
Make money now with local City and Guilds and ABE endorsed certificates and Distinction College. Start new online and face-to-face classes very soon in our Make Money Now career courses and get qualified jobs worldwide or start your own business in practical pediatric, geriatric, and psychiatric nursing, phlebotomy and pharmacy technician, early childhood education, child care, cashiering, call center, event planning, receptionist, customer service, housekeeping, waitering, food preparation, bartending, cake baking, plumbing, motor vehicle, electrical installation, air conditioning, makeup, hairdressing, nail technician, and cosmetology. No subjects acquired, no age limit. Register this week and get City and Guilds Maths and English classes for free. Call us at 3564167.
Hi, I'm Jessica Saunders, and you're watching JNN. JNN, news worth watching.
My name is Andrea. Due to the fact that our teachers are migrating for better payment, what can you do to keep our teachers home here in Jamaica?
What the government going to do for a teacher? Knowing that the teacher is going away now.
What the government going to do to stop the migration of the people? Because if they don't give the teacher them no pay, the kids them going to go to nothing. You understand? They're going to workless. Some of them going to thief.
Welcome back. This is the RJR Gleaner Town Hall on the education sector as we prepare for back to school in September. Now, you heard the questions there from persons around the corporate area, I believe. Dr. Troop, we'll start with you. What is the government going to do about teacher migration?
Well, Herman, the movement of our teachers is very important to us. As a sector, we rely on the instructional expertise of our teachers. They are the ones who monitor our kids. They are the ones who ensure that the curriculum is implemented. You know, they are the ones who wipe the noses of our boys and girls in the early childhood and so forth. So it's very, very important to us, and we are concerned about it. You know, as a ministry, we really wouldn't want to see our teachers go, you know, but individuals have pursuits, you know, they have interests elsewhere, and so if they choose to go, we will not stop them. You know, we can't stop them. It's a personal choice. What we have to do here as a ministry is to make sure that our schools can pivot as it relates to the movement of our teachers. And our minister has presented approximately 16 strategies recently that we have sent out to our schools, outlining options that can be considered to treat with the replacement of our teachers. That's what the Ministry of Education has to treat with now. I know the broader issue about compensation and so, which is the remit of the Ministry of Finance. And of course, the JTA and other members continue for negotiations with that. And we support that process when we are called to the table. The Ministry of Education is always at that table supporting and explaining the different facilities that can be included in the heads of agreement. But as it is now, our responsibility is to support our principals and our school leaders, our boards, to make sure that there are options available to our schools to replace the teachers who will leave us.
I want to go to the JTA president, Ms. Harrison. As it relates to teachers migrating, what's the feel of your association, and what do you think can be done, or what do they want to be done? I'm not sure if everybody wants to leave. What is the mood like as it relates to migration?
Well, we having, of course, the discourse starting about the number of teachers leaving, we thought it prudent to release a survey looked at not only the teachers that were migrating. We have to look at the broader situation. We had 600, or responses from 140 principals revealed that 600 spaces would need to be filled, 252 of which would be as a result of teachers migrating, and another 44 plus 13% shared between those who are going on leave and those who are retiring from the system. So we have that pool to be filled. Of the migration, simply put, if we pay our teachers better, that would certainly be an incentive for them to stay. Our teachers, I'm sure if we poll, and we intend to, that persons really do not want to leave. They would certainly want to stay here, but coupled with the poor remuneration package that we currently receive, cost of living, inflation, all of the challenges that we're facing in the society, the working conditions, if those were improved, it would significantly reduce the stress of our teachers. And so that would help significantly in persons
in persons decide choosing to stay. I want to get back to you as it relates to come this September. Before I get to that, our floor person, Javon Gordon, he has a question right from the floor here.
Yes, Herman. With me, we have Sabrina Barnes, and she has a question about teacher migration. Sabrina, go ahead.
Hello, good night. All here.
Good night.
All right. So as he said before, my question is re-teacher migration. So we understand that the ministry's resort is to replace the teachers that are leaving. So I want to know what psychosocial measure is going to be in place for the students, because teachers don't only teach, they impact lives. And we have fostered relationships with these teachers. We spend more time with them than our parents. So I want to know on behalf of the students, what are the measures going to be put in place for us? Because, you know, we're going to be interacting with strangers if we don't have our teachers.
Okay. What measures are, Dr. Troop, I guess you will.
Well, the psychosocial component of our school program is a staple. You know, in our schools, we have guidance counselors who are responsible for the leadership of the psychosocial component. In fact, we have 1,016 guidance counselors in our schools. And what they do each year is to develop what we call a guidance and counseling program. And that program is informed by a needs assessment that must be done annually to inform what is needed in that school so they can be preventative. And of course, included in that program is what we call the interventive strategies. So those guidance counselors are trained. They are trained in guidance and counseling. They may be trained in psychology. They may be trained in social work, and clinical social work is a major part of that. We have layered onto that some frameworks that our guidance counselors can pull on. During the pandemic, we developed what we call a socio-emotional learning framework that was sent to our schools that gave some guidance as to who can be pulled in to work with our students, suspending the academics for a period of time, week after week, or for an entire week or every other day, just to make sure that we are focusing on the well-being, the mental well-being of our students. We partnered with the Ministry of Health just before the closure of schools. We had 28 psychologists in our schools working with our children and students. And I'm saying that these psychologists will be back with us. Layered onto that, we have 18 other professionals who will be joining in that, 40 persons coming on board to provide clinical services to our students and teachers and parents, depending on the reason for the child to be referred to that counselor or psychologist. So that's something that is major. Even when we speak to our principals, I recently spoke to the Region 2 principals on Tuesday, and that's the first thing we talk about. Do not rush into the curriculum. It's not about just the academic. We all went to college. We talk about the academic, the psychomotor, the affective. The affective domain is very important to the well-being, to the mindset, and the readiness for learning. We have asked them, suspend the focus for now and treat with the socio-emotional learning experiences. And then after that, we'll see the students just moving. You know, they are calmer. They are not reacting to a little touch. You know, they can process things. They can communicate. They exercise understanding and empathy. That's the kind of approach that we have asked
I see where the plan is there. It seems to be in place. What I want to bring in is Tyson now. Based on what you're hearing, I mean, the challenges that students seem to be anticipating, facing new people almost every year or every term, possibly sometimes. What do you see? How much of a challenge do you see that being?
Well, I appreciate that the fact that the ministry has been putting things in place to help, but I'm wondering how effective it is going to be in terms of the numbers of schools, teachers, students that those persons will have to, you know, service, for lack of a better word. I think it will help, but certainly what the student said, the teacher has a closer touch with the student than a guidance counselor. For instance, I know that Arden has 3 guidance counselors with 2,000 students. There is no way that they can effectively cover all of the issues that those students would present with. It has to be that the teachers will have to play a part of helping those students to adjust socially and emotionally.
All right, we have another question on the floor, but before I go to you, Javon, I just want to bring in Mr. Wright here, Linvern Wright. From the principal's perspective, the change of the migrating teachers, those who are on leave, what kind of gap are we looking at from where you stand?
It's mostly to do with particular areas. So, for example, what came out of the ministry was a list in terms of the number of teachers graduating. But if you check in the technical areas, so for example, building construction, electrical, all of those, we hardly see them represented there. There are, I think, about 6 social studies teachers in the whole batch of how many in the ministry had sent to us. So there are going to be areas that are going to be scarce. Mathematics seem to be okay, but the fact, our challenge really is that when you're zeroing on particular areas, we are going to have a shortage. Many schools now, among the principals, when we talk mechanical engineering technology. And what's a tragedy about that is that we have been speaking to technical education for many years now, but it doesn't seem that we are having the kind of recruitment necessary to fill those gaps.
So is it that these areas is not really the migration, but there's a shortage locally?
Well, there's a shortage of that, but many of them go because they are technologically savvy people. I mean, there are many. They are technically savvy people, so they go in these areas. Welding, all of those persons are needed.
Okay, I want to get another question in here. Javon, who do you have for us?
Yes, we have Chad Lorne from the National Secondary Students Council, NSSC, with his question.
Okay, so my question is regarding the teacher migration. All right. So how do you aim to alleviate the effects of teacher migration on students in the subject areas burdened by brain drain? For example, the arts and sciences.
Okay, I think Dr. Troop spoke pretty much to that, but it brings back again, he pointed out arts and sciences. I think you wanted to say something here, Ms. Harrison?
I was underscoring the point of Mr. Linvern that the areas he highlighted, there were shortages prior to the pandemic, and the migration that has
this year's
migration that seems to be of greater interest in terms of numbers than it has been in other times before. But those areas are areas that we have been struggling with, and it's growing worse. And even more so with, we even had scholarships at one of our teacher training institutions that have not been taken up. You know, I just interviewed a gentleman for a scholarship at the JTA, and he said his batch was the last cohort to complete that particular course at Teachers College. And so we're really in a bind where that is concerned. It's because we need to change the narrative where skill education is concerned, or those who pursue vocational areas. The tradition is those who are bright, we send them on to academia, and those who are quote unquote what we call dunce, we direct them. And had we as a nation over the years had a framework and a plan that says all children channel some of our brightest minds into these areas, we would not be in search of skill sets from overseas. Or GDP would have been turning, or economy would have been turning, because those are the persons who would
have been here taking care of it. All right, I will have to pick up back on that. I said the audience appreciates that, but we're up on another break. So for those of you watching, the conversation is just getting heated here. You're watching the RJR Gleaner Group Town Hall on Education. We'll be right back.
Make money now with local City and Guilds and ABE endorsed certificates and Distinction College. Start new online and face-to-face classes very soon in our Make Money Now career courses and get qualified jobs worldwide, or start your own business in practical pediatric, geriatric, and psychiatric nursing, phlebotomy and pharmacy technician, early childhood education, child care, cashiering, call center, event planning, receptionist, customer service, housekeeping, waitering, food preparation, bartending, cake baking, plumbing, motor vehicle, electrical installation, air conditioning, makeup, hairdressing, nail technician, and
Hi, I'm Shane Masters, producer-presenter here at Jamaica News Network, JNN. For all the latest on the local, regional, and international scene, tune into Frontline News at 8 p.m. Mondays to Fridays. You can also follow us on our social media pages at Jamaica News Network, JNN. News worth watching.
Hello, I'm Marvin Moody, and you're watching JNN. JNN, news worth watching.
Power up your weekend with a Weekend Star, where we have everything exciting to power up your weekend. A sports magazine, more entertainment coverage, weekend escape, and even more of what is happening to people out there. The Weekend Star, we gather the most interesting, the most compelling, and most entertaining stories to kickstart your weekend. The Weekend Star, still the people paper. Get your copy this Friday.
Welcome back. You're watching the RGR Gleaner Group Town Hall on the education sector as we prepare for back to school. Now, as I said before, it's all about the questions from everybody out there and also here in our studio. So I go to Javon to tell us what we have. Who is the next person and what's the next question? Javon?
Thank you, Herman. We have Javante Webster, who is the Vice President of Special Services and Projects of the Huey Mona Guild, with his question.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. So firstly, Chief Education Officer. So I heard you speak, very highly about us being very optimistic about going back to school. I'm not that critical either, but at the same time, I do understand that we're in a pretty serious situation, rather. So I would prefer if we don't, try to overplay it, because we're in a crisis. My question is, it's for the past 5 years, we have experienced two different dynamics as related to teaching. COVID kind of really changed up a lot of things, moving from face-to-face to online. Now we're going back to face-to-face. So my question is, with us going back to face-to-face, given the circumstance that teachers are migrating, and not also migrating, teachers also resigning and retiring, we want to know what measure, so the switch from the traditional, how are things going to be in terms of the classroom setting, Is it that we're going back to the whole normal, whereby the teacher is the leader of the classroom, but no, we don't have enough, to online, where everybody is at home, to not going back? So I want to know, what are you guys anticipating and how do you intend to battle this?
Herman?
All right. Dr. Troop, that sounds like it's squarely for you.
Well, as I indicated earlier, Herman, our principals are trained individuals. They are the instructional leaders of their institutions. We have indicated that we are going back to face-to-face.
Does that mean that you're ruling out online, any such
Online
interaction?
will never leave us, because even when we went back to face-to-face recently, we have had to move into virtual spaces from time to time based on something happening in a local context. There's a road issue, there's rain, and we have seen our principals pivoting back, to treat with that. So that's the nature of how we have got to operate now. We have to be flexible, agile, and so face-to-face is what the predominant methodology and approach and modality will be. But we are going to incorporate the flipped classroom. We have to incorporate the technology. We have a lot of platforms available. And even in my own home, my children were exposed to the virtual space, and they have developed a preference for that.
It sounds like you're saying the ministry says back to face-to-face, but the school itself, the individual community, they can decide if they need to employ online.
There will be times when the school will apply that modality. For example, in the past, our principals used to close schools for meetings or so forth. Now I see principals saying this is an asynchronous day We are going to have staff development. We are going to do something as a staff. You will work online for today. That's novel. That's what the new approach will look like. That's the new normal. So it is here to stay.
All right, Mr. Wright, comment on that. There seems to be a bit of confusion in terms of what to expect, what the students should expect. Give us some clarity.
I mean, technology is a wonderful idea. It is something that all of us have embraced. I think many teachers are much better now. Many principals are better at managing. The challenge that is there that we mustn't delude ourselves about is that technology works when you have internet. Technology works when you have computers. Right now, in terms of our national coverage, there are many schools that don't have that, and the lack of access many students had is what deprived many of them of an education. Where we need to go nationally in terms of our telecommunications companies, in terms of government, we have always been talking about technology. COVID came and caught us off guard, and we are still off guard. So when this storm comes again, we are going to be in problems. The thing is that we need to do the investment in technology and stop talking about it. We are talking. What I would love to hear is the number of schools that have reliable internet. The number of schools that have technology that people can say we have the funding to spend on technology. It is just not there, and unless you have some past student who decides that we want to give some lab to the school, or you got some lucky money down the years on the road, you have some old computers now to work with, you have problems. What we're saying, it's a wonderful thing, and the young man asked a wonderful question, but unfortunately, I don't think as a country we are ready for these young people and the hope they have.
I hear what he's saying, but that's the audience, and they're on the ground. It sounds like there's a disconnect between what the ministry thinks is happening or what wants to happen and what's really on the ground with the principals and the students. What do you say to that?
There's no disconnect. We have communicated with our principals. They know the broadband plan. Mr. Wright knows that we have invested in 400 schools already, have been entered into with contracts. We have over approximately 300 of those schools that are already connected, and they know that. And we have indicated to our principals at what phase that you will come onto the broadband program.
Before you proceed, they said 400 schools. How many schools are we talking about island-wide?
We have 1,002 public schools. We have developed a broadband plan that will see us spending $5.5 billion in infrastructure upgrade in our schools.
All right, quickly.
We have entered into contract.
When did the plan start?
The plan has started since we have been in the COVID. It takes time.
So from 2020 to now.
And we have indicated, Herman, that the pandemic has delayed some of this because of what happened and getting the materials into the country. We have never not say this to our principals. They're aware, and so it was delayed, and we have gone back to say we will not meet the timelines, but these are the schools that will be satisfied for the start of the school year. It's just the reality of the time. We cannot make something happen if the materials are not in the country. But there is a plan, and there is budgetary commitment for that, and we have communicated that to our schools.
Okay, I see. Before I go to our next question from our audience, Ms. Harrison, you wanted to comment on that?
I'm just asking, it would be interesting to find out what has been the feedback from the schools in which this broadband plan has been introduced. How effective has it been? Yes, is there real access across the campus? And are all students able, are teachers able to engage the students effectively using with all students be able to bring their device and the teachers actually able to carry out research and do their thing in the classroom.
Yes.
Okay,
not
Dr.
in
True.
a particular.
Is there any such assessment done?
What's the feedback from the
There
300?
was an assessment that was done, and it is that assessment that was done to determine the demand based on enrollment that indicated how much bandwidth will be given to each school. That was done. Right? And we are building out the wireless capacity within each school. So the access points that is being alluded to, we are providing that so the internet can be reached at different spots in the school. It's not an instant fix. It's not an instant fix.
All right, I want to bring another question in here. Javon, who do you have for us?
Yes, the audience is indeed here, Herman. And our next question comes from infant school principal, Miss Nadine Gale. Nadine?
Primary and infant. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I am very concerned about the influx of new teachers coming on the system, coming in the system. From the JTC standpoint, every new teacher must be mentored for at least 3 years, for the first 3 years. If our experienced teachers are leaving, the question is, who will do the mentoring?
Herman?
Okay. A valid question there.
She's not finished. I don't think she finished.
Oh, you're not. You're not finished. Okay, go ahead. I want to hear the other one. Go ahead.
I also want to add to that to say that if it is that those of us who choose to remain will now have to shoulder the burden of not just doing what you normally do, which is already challenging, but we somehow have been able to manage. And now we have to be mentoring new persons. And depending on the context of certain schools, it's going to be far more challenging than others. We are looking at possibly teacher burnout. How prepared are we to treat that? And are there any creative strategies or intervention in place for seeing such an eventuality so that we can treat with the situation so that it does not get to that stage?
Okay. All right. Thank you much.
So, Herman.
You're in the hot seat today. Go ahead.
We don't know that it's only our seasoned teachers are leaving us. We don't know that.
But it sounds like the vast majority or a good percentage of them are senior teachers.
Not necessarily.
I don't think they're recruiting.
Not necessarily.
I don't think they're recruiting young professionals of college.
They are.
Okay.
Young persons are creative and they're inspirational and they're making themselves known in the scene. Each year, our data shows that we add over 1,000 new teachers, what we call beginning teachers, into the system, right? And we have been able to provide mentorship over the years. The Jamaica Teaching Council has a mentorship core of 600 teachers, and they are available to the system this year.
So you're saying there's no challenge with mentorship?
I'm not saying that they
is
will.
that correct? 3 years for mentorship? That's normally.
We do the hand-holding over a period of time. Before the Jamaica Teaching Council came into effect, it is something that was managed at the school level. And our teachers and principals have said we needed support to carry this on. And the Jamaica Teaching Council, as part of its professional development suite, established the mentorship core, trained our teachers, and they are available. We have 600 persons in the core, and we will use those persons to help our schools.
Your response to that, Ms. Harrison?
It's not that it is the panacea, but we have support for our teachers.
How effective is that, Ms. Harrison, JT, from the JTA's perspective?
All of this, the fourth-year graduates exiting colleges will not enter the teaching profession. That's one. And also, our experienced teachers, we are on the ground. We know some of the persons who are leaving. My friends are going. They are seasoned, experienced teachers who have gone. I talked to a principal. She's crying because one of her right-hand soldier who is takes care of so many of our projects and things within the school is gone, and she's literally wondering how much human person, because what she did, several persons will have to take over those duties. We know that some of our most seasoned teachers are going. Yes, they're recruiting some newbies, but they're taking away a lot. And these are, when we even see some senior teachers, persons who would have been in posts, you have persons at even other levels of the education strata who are going as well. Principals are going as well. So we have a challenge. So when she asked about who will mentor, some of the very persons who the JTC had in that pool are gone because they're lead teachers.
As a consultant, Ms. Tyson, you're hearing the challenges as it relates to this. I'm going to have to hold up. I want your response to this. How do you see us managing all of this, and are we doing a good job? We are up on another break. Conversation is getting heated here, people. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
money now with local City and Guilds and ABE endorsed certificates and Distinction College. Start new online and face-to-face classes very soon in or make money now career courses and get qualified jobs worldwide or start your own business in practical pediatric, geriatric, and psychiatric nursing, phlebotomy and pharmacy technician, early childhood education, child care, cashiering, call center, event planning, receptionist, customer service, housekeeping, waitering, food preparation, bartending, cake baking, plumbing, motor vehicle, electrical installation, air conditioning, makeup, hairdressing, nail technician, and cosmetology. No subjects acquired, no age limit. Register this week and get City and Guilds Maths and English classes for free. Call us at 3564167.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Lutin, principal of Kingston High School, and you are watching JNN, News You Can Depend On.
Brutality isn't a legality. There's no rationality as to why this abnormality should become a mentality. A mentality which kills and torture. Are you really telling me you're afraid to speak up because you might be called an informer? Let us break the barrier of brutality and enforce it with alacrity. If you know someone who has been victimized, I charge you to I, interrupt their situations before their O, oppressor continues to L, lurk in their lives. Let us E, extend our hands to our brothers and sisters who are being victimized, and N, never see violent acts and ignore them. Let us C, come together and be the E, example, so we may end a barrier on brutality.
Welcome back. This is the RJR Gleaner Town Hall on the education sector. Before the break, we were hearing somewhat of a back and forth or a disconnect here, but I really want to hear from Ms. Tyson. You are going to give an assessment of what you've been hearing so far, the audience,
Yes.
the complaints, the confusion, and how the ministry and the teachers are dealing with it. What are you seeing?
Well, I have a opinion where, with all due respect, Dr. Troop, that the ministry sometimes is not really in touch with what's happening on the ground. Seriously. And there needs to be a greater connection between the ministry, that is a central office that does policy, whatever, and those persons on the ground who know what is happening. Because sometimes when I hear some pronouncement from the ministry, and if I'm involved with a school, for instance, the whole matter of bandwidth, I'm involved with 2 schools where I know the ministry has given them the bandwidth and it is not sufficient. They are not able to carry out all of the things that they want to. The teachers would be in the class, and then you hear that they are disconnected, they cannot find connection in another area. And I'm like, don't you have this bandwidth, whatever that the ministry has put in? Yes, but it is not working efficiently. So there needs to be better communication between the ministry and the people on the ground. Seriously.
Now, before you respond to that, Dr. Troop, I see you wanted to. What would you suggest in terms of making that connection?
Well, one, the regional area directors need to be empowered and given enough resources so that they can effectively supervise the schools that they have responsibility for. You will hear that there are a number of, office, what do you call that?
Education officers.
Right, or they don't have enough of those persons to go around. In the rural areas, you have some of poor education officers have to be driving from Timbuktu to another place. When they're finished doing that, they can't cover the number of schools that they have under them. It's not being effective. And one of the challenges I have is that we are not very strong at monitoring and evaluating things that have been implemented on the ground.
All right, Dr. Troop. Disconnect between the ministry and what's happening on the ground.
Herman, as it relates to the broadband program, we know that there are going to be challenges, and so that is why we set up our help desk. We talk about communication. All the schools that are on the program now, they know the numbers to call if there's a challenge, and we respond. The system is interconnected. Our eGov Jamaica is working with us. They have oversight in each school. They can tell us if a school is down and how long a school is down. And they do the troubleshooting for us, and there are layers of action that take place. So things are in place for the communication and for the response. But there are going to be challenges even in your own homes. If you're at home, you have a network problem. It's just the network of the country at this time, and it will affect our school. It does not mean that we're not talking to our schools. It does not mean that the resources are not being provided. They are just national challenges that will impact our schools.
So the education ministry need to speak to the science ministry to get all that sorted out so that our schools can remain connected.
Well, and if you go to the United States of America or anywhere, we have challenges with internet globally. And there's a greater demand for same, and the country is responding as best as it can. But it will impact teaching and learning. It's not a smooth sailing. But to say that we don't know it's happening from the broadband perspective, that's not the case. eGov is on top of things. They survey, they tell us, they even tell us how long a person is online. They tell us what is being used, what the internet is being used for.
Okay.
And they're even implementing now the filtering policy, because if you have a heavy demand on YouTube, we now have to go to our schools and say, let's download content. So
Okay.
you're not using up the bandwidth to treat with this when it can be downloaded. So there's management to be coordinated with respect to the internet use. But there are going to be challenges because of what we can provide at this time.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. All right. Let's go back to our audience again for another question. Javon?
Yes, Herman. No, we have a teacher from the Alpha Academy, Melissa Beckford Simpson, with her question.
Thank you so much. I am a proud classroom teacher, and I would like to stay. Let me begin with that. But there are some concerns that I have, and perhaps this question is more directed at the principals on the panel, but I'd still like to know as well from the point of view of the ministry. I have a concern about the increasing levels of unsociable behavior that is being displayed by our students. And I'd like to think that the pandemic has something to do with that, because I would have seen some of that even in my own children. And so I would like to understand, how is it that we tie the hands almost of the school administrators, and then we are expected to treat with all of this unsociable behavior. So when we have these contradictory statements coming out to say things that they cannot do and so on, I'd perhaps like to hear what kind of creative measures Mr. Wright would employ, for example, in terms of dealing with this high level of unsociable behavior. I have a concern for my own safety in the classroom, and I'd like to stay.
Okay. Mr. Wright, straight to you.
Yeah, a lot of times we speak of creative. One of the things I sort of find is that when people misbehave in many instances, I know we talk about the psychosocial and that sort of thing, but what I find happening in society now is that we sort of seeming to rob people of the consequences of their action sometimes. And I think in many instances when our young people go wrong about things, what we get are people just saying, okay, it's about rights, it's about whatever. We have got to make a distinction between responsibility and rights and deal with that. But the other point that I think we need to be dealing with is that our young people need to be seeing consistency from us. If school administrators say this, we cannot have the minister saying X or the prime minister saying Y and somebody else out there saying. There has got to be some kind of national consensus, some kind of discussion like this about what it is we consider to be in the best interest of our kids. The next thing that I think ought to happen, and I hear that coming, is that the maladaptive behaviors from many of our young children has a lot to do with the fact that there's not sufficient support in terms of social support for them. So for example, when children go to guidance counselors in schools, and yes, there are guidance counselors in school, maybe they're not enough, but they are there. When we refer them sometimes to these state agencies, the state agencies don't have the resources to deal with them. And so they come back to us with the same problems. Because you refer them, but the state agencies, there are not enough persons in CDA, in all of these things to deal with many of them. The teachers don't have the capacity to deal with the behaviors for how bad they have gone. And I think that until we recognize that there has got to be an investment in dealing with many of these social problems by putting in human resources out there to help these young people to build the kind of relationships that will help them. We're going to have them still.
Okay. I want to go to, before I go back to the floor, go ahead, Ms. Tyson.
One of my biggest concerns is that we seem to disconnect school and home. And as a country, we are failing miserably in terms of how our children are being parented. Years ago, Prime Minister Pattison developed or was supposed to develop a values and attitude campaign. It just fell flat. It never got off the ground. And I remember years ago saying to a particular Minister of Education that as a people, we must address parenting in order for the schools to do well in terms of socially. And the minister said, it was a forum like this, the minister said that the ministry or the government cannot mandate parenting. And I believe, I do not agree with that. I believe that the minute that someone is pregnant and going to clinic, that in that clinic, there should be parenting sessions so they understand how to parent that child. And we are seeing the fallout of all of this. The fatherlessness in this nation is endemic, okay? The mothers who are just more blinging than paying attention to their children, it has gone out of hand. And until we begin to pay attention to that, we are not going to move very far when it comes to social and emotional behavior.
Okay, good point there. I want to go back to the floor. Javon, who do you have for us?
And the next question is about students who've been left behind. And this question comes from educator Dr. Hilton Fraser.
Thank you so much, Javon, and thank you to the panelists tonight. And it's so funny that Ms. Tyson talked a while ago about the home. My concern as, I think, a continued educator is thinking about those students who did not have access prior to the pandemic, had no access during the pandemic. What of those students? What will continue to happen to those students who are still not getting the kinds of support that they need? So yes, we talk about all these teachers that are coming into the system, these new teachers and all of that. But the fact still remains that we have some of our most marginalized students who have not been connected and continue to not be connected because we are focused on this new normal, but normal for whom?
All right. Ms. Harrison? in terms of the preparation then, from what I'm getting from Hilton Fraser.
My responses to some questions will not be the normal ones because as a country that we say we believe in God, I don't think in a real way we've really sought Him to help us to treat with the many challenges that we have. Some of these things, human wisdom will not be able to fix, say.
Right.
Now, when we look at our those students who were, and that goes back to just our educational offering. You don't want to get me into the whole matter of our philosophy of education and that we have a system that creates, that facilitates some more than others, empower some to succeed more than others, the haves versus the have-nots. And so it is perpetuating. So had we had a system that facilitated equitable educational opportunity for all prior to pandemic, then we would have a greater response, I believe, or mechanism to catch those who are falling, right? As a result, nonetheless, we're at this place at 60 and the opportunities being afforded us to look at how we truly do education and how we're going to create a framework that will provide access, equitable access and opportunities for all children. And so we have to continue to, we need the parents know where their children are. So
No,
and some
not
of them
all of
don't,
them.
we understand, but we have as a society, when we see somebody on the road, we see the child. We know their age range. Child, why are you not in school? We do the kind of inquiry, but as a society, we are no longer so caring. We really are not so caring, and
All right,
for us to alert
put a pause on it right there. I'm up on another break. You're watching the RJR Gleaner Group Town Hall. We'll be right back.
Power up your weekend with the Weekend Star, where we have everything exciting to power up your weekend. A sports magazine, more entertainment coverage, weekend escape, and even more of what is happening to people out there. The Weekend Star, we gather the most interesting, the most compelling, and most entertaining stories to kickstart your weekend. The Weekend Star, still the people paper. Get your copy this Friday.
Hi, I'm Marlene Street Forest, Managing Director of the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and you're watching JNN News Worth Watching.
Hi, I'm Carrie Ann Golson, and you're watching JNN. JNN News Worth Watching.
Hi, I'm Delaware Whiteley, and you're watching JNN. JNN News Worth Watching.
The question is for the minister is, with the high cost of textbook, does the Ministry of Education would put a subsidy on textbook? Because the cost of living, my cost of books is $38,000, and that does not include GCT.
Welcome back. This is the RJR Gleaner Group Communication Group, or Town Hall on the education sector. You heard the question there. It's for the minister, but Dr. Troop, you are here fielding them for her.
Yes. So
Any assistance with cost of books for going back to school?
Herman, we do provide books for our students at our primary, infant primary and secondary level. In fact, the ministry is spending $2 billion this year on textbooks. We will spend $1 billion at the primary level, providing workbooks and a class set of textbooks for our primary schools, and we will provide the secondary level with textbooks under the book loan program. We have not provided sufficient books for the secondary schools for quite some time.
That's the book rental system?
That's for the book rental. Last year we spent 200 million. This year we are spending 1 billion because there's a gap. We have not been delivering, and so this year the secondary schools will get priority. We have completed procurement and distribution is about to start. So we will be providing some help for our parents with textbooks.
All right. Well, it's time to be buying the books now, and the persons are saying they have a $38,000 book list
right, so
price tag there. Let me speak with Mr. Wright.
Supplementary.
What's the position there? Parents still have book lists coming to a lot of thousands of dollars, but the ministry says they are helping with book rental. What's the difference?
I mean, the ministry is doing that. The book rental scheme really has been a sore point for many of us for how long, but Dr. Troop is saying that that is something that is being addressed. In terms of books, there are just some subjects that there's a need for other books to assist, and you see we speak like this, but you check the prep schools and certain high schools that people consider to be, they have their book lists, and those are hardly bothered by people. The fact is that when many other schools say, okay, buy some books, especially in these schools where you have these disadvantaged kids, in many instances here, you don't need it. But the fact is that they are needed. What really we need to be ensuring is that our teachers are using them, because I hear that from parents.
Right. I think
And
that's
as
a
a principal, I will make that point to say that is something that we need to ensure. But to say they are not needed sometimes, the way I hear it, I think it's problematic.
So try to ensure that they use those books that you actually put on the book
Yeah,
list.
we have got
and
to
you
do
say,
more as
as
principals
far as
to
the book
ensure that.
rental system is concerned, is it that there's not enough books?
There
for the
hasn't
schools?
been enough for years.
Okay.
And I hear now that money is being provided for that. We hope that is going to be adequate, because the gap has been so much that the 1 billion might just be stopping a gap, given the number of years things have been. But
Okay, we hope that works out
Dr.
there.
Troop can tell us later on when it comes out and we know what's happening.
All right, we'll hear about that. All right, we'll go back to the floor for another question. Javon?
Yes, our next question comes from the National Secondary Students Council, the president, Daniel Jordan.
Okay, good night. During the last academic year, we really saw how the violence in Jamaica infiltrated the classrooms. We saw the recordings posted on the various social media platforms, and also students were very disheartened. So my question is really, has an effort been made to better train or better train teachers to provide guidance to students as a result of the increase in violence in Jamaica that has infiltrated the classrooms?
All right. I'm not sure who you wanted to pitch that to, but Ms. Harrison? Ms. Harrison?
Better trained teachers to assist with the
Antisocial behavior, I guess, school violence in our schools.
Behavior. I believe our teachers are well trained. That's why they're being recruited by foreign countries. And I'm not sure if it is the training of the teachers that is the only solution to the problem, because the students ought to come to school ready for learning. So again, it goes back to our matter of parenting. We will always continue to empower our classroom teachers with strategies and management tools to help them to be able to meet the needs of our children. But again, those are matters not for the teacher in the classroom for teaching and learning. That's why we need the support systems in our schools, other human resourcing such as the guidance counselors, the psychologists. We have 1 to 600 in our schools. In our last heads of agreement, we had asked for 1 to 500. That is to be still activated in many of our schools across the nation, and 1 to 500 is still a lot. I'm talking about the ratio of pupil to guidance counselors. And so we have to look at a holistic response to that, because the nation, the home needs repairing. And that is the foundation of everything. And again, we continue to empower our teachers through continuous professional development in which they are engaged. And we do the best that we can, but the total resourcing of schools is certainly something that we need to look at. And again, to call on more divine intervention, because some of these challenges that the children come with, only God can even help the guidance counselors to treat with same.
I want to bring in
It's a serious
I want to bring
crisis.
you in here. Based on what you're seeing, I mean, since the pandemic, I think it seems to have increased in terms of violence in schools.
Yes.
How do you see us
definitely.
dealing with that?
And of course, rampant sexual behavior that's not supposed to be in school.
Yes.
Yes. So, and I go
teacher.
back to it, and I will not come off it until the day I pass from this earth. That if we do not address our family life in this nation, it is not going to get better in the classroom. It is simply going to get worse. So then we are going to be discussing, should teachers be carrying weapons to school to defend themselves? That's where we are going to reach, unless we understand that it starts from the home. I used to do something at Arden. Every year when the students came in for grade 7, we had orientation. I would say to them, how many of you go to Sunday school or Sabbath school? And every year the number diminished. Okay? And I'm saying what we had to do at Arden, when we've had a class, when we identified a class that there were really issues, we put in parenting sessions for the parents. They came to school 6:30 in the morning to be in those sessions until 7:30 when school started. And because they needed help, they came. We put in parenting sessions on Saturdays, and they came because they knew that they needed help.
Okay, I want to bring in Mr. Wright.
We have to find
Anything like that in place to deal with? How are we addressing violence in schools going forward?
One of the big things that we have to look at is that we have got to understand, and I heard the chief education officer speak to it, that we have got to have significant space for values in schools. Because one of the things that is happening is that we are driving, you hear all the talk, books, 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 right? The kind of preparatory work that needs to be done with our children to ensure that their mindset is ready for education, is ready for socialization, is ready for interaction, is something I don't think in many instances sometimes our schools will really pay attention to. So when you get the CXC coming out and GSAT, you get significant levels of discussion. But when it comes on to values, it's more that we are really horrified, but we really don't discuss and contemplate and are reflective about it. And I keep on making the point that one of the things that we have got to do is that we have got to empower our teachers and have them understand that it is okay not to teach English sometimes. In fact, maybe half the time, it is okay not to teach mathematics, because no matter how well these kids are doing mathematics and English, if somebody is not relating to them to ensure that they become better human beings, we're going to have a problem. And what I think we have to do is to get our ministry, is to get our principals, is to get our teachers to understand that this business of values is important. It's all about valuables and things. It has got now to be about people and how we relate and how we get them going. And I say principals, teachers, parents, the taxi driver, everybody out there in the spaces, we have got to be reinforcing the same things to help our kids to stop the fighting.
Okay, we're up on another break. We'll be back in a minute.
Hello, I'm Marvin Moody, and you're watching JNN. JNN, news worth watching.
Brutality isn't a legality. There's no rationality as to why this abnormality should become a mentality. A mentality which kills and torture. Are you really telling me you're afraid to speak up because you might be called an informer? Let us break the barrier of brutality and enforce it with alacrity. If you know someone who has been victimized, I charge you to I, interrupt their situations before their O, oppressor continues to L, lurk in their lives. Let us E, extend our hands to our brothers and sisters who are being victimized, and N, never see violent acts and ignore them. Let us C, come together and be the E, example, so we may end a barrier on brutality.
Hi, I'm Timothy Simmons, and you're watching JNN. JNN, news worth watching.
Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to also thank the various stakeholders here for their profound questions so far and the panelists' insightful answers. But my concern has been a lot of times when we talk about back to school and the new normal, we focus a lot on primary and secondary students, and we tend to forget that our tertiary students exist. And one of the concerns I have as the president of the Union of Tertiary Students is that one of the things that we said new normal, the old normal did for a lot of tertiary students is that it gave us the opportunity to balance being a student and also working. The ministry and other stakeholders have maintained that free tertiary education will never be a thing again, and we have grown to accept that. And so many students rely on being able to balance work and having access to online classes. And it sounds very simple. I know we have issues about digital learning, access to reliable Wi-Fi and devices, but some students still very much rely on online learning. The ministry through the JTech was working on a virtual standards document that to date has not come to fruition, which was supposed to guide institutions on how exactly to deliver online learning in a quality environment, while also ensuring that students would continue to have access to that. A lot of tertiary institutions have announced face-to-face learning. Many have refused to provide that option, that option for students. And the tertiary students need that option. What policy can we think about to work together to ensure that our students can still have access to online learning while being able to work and afford the tertiary education that they so need? Thank you.
Herman.
All right.
Very good question. Well, Herman, we have been working on the higher education policy as intimated earlier. We are at the consultation stage, and so we will be having a series of conversations with our higher education leaders in the sector so we can, define the framework for higher education, how that will look. The thrust internationally is the flexible pathways, right? And so Jamaica has also got to move in that direction. It gives a lot of autonomy to students. In a sense, it depowers the formal structure, and so we have to treat with that as well. So there's a lot of learning to take place. In the pandemic, the period of the pandemic, there was a lot of dishonesty with online assessment and so forth that the universities have to learn through and to put systems in place to prevent that kind of recurrence. So there are things for us to learn. There are things for us to change. It will happen through dialogue and conversation. We are about to roll out the conversations now. We will learn from our higher education sector. We will learn from the international space, and we will formalize. We understand the demands of our students. Some leaders are very innovative and very flexible and will move in that direction whilst they treat with the challenges of it, while others would want to wait, develop the frame, develop consensus, develop the security systems, and then roll that out for the flexibility to be included in the pathway. So we have some work to do. We do have some work to do. It's new. The technology forced us. Some of us were never ready, and some of us want to go back to our comfort zone. So we have some more work to do for the higher education sector.
Okay, good. Thanks. Let's go to another question from our floor.
Yes, Herman, we have another infant school principal, Mr. Toya Greaves, coming to us to ask us a question about the nutrition policy.
We are all aware of the new nutrition policy implemented by the ministry. My question, will there be an increase in the nutrition grant provided to early childhood institution in order for us to provide more nutritious meals to these students?
Straight to you, Dr. Troop. Will there be an increase?
Herman, that's not a decision I can take at this point in time. We have a budget. The budget has been approved. It's an executive matter that has to be reviewed. We have been participating in international conferences about nutrition in school, and it is a global issue. Everywhere we go, you hear people saying we need more budget space for nutrition in school, especially for students who are needy. Governments have to find ways to respond to that. Some of the recommendations we got from the World Food Program recently is to see how we can go back to school gardening. We had a study tour of some countries recently, and we saw novel ideas of where farming, gardening, those are run by parents. So
Okay.
there's a partnership with parents where the parents get the opportunity to use plots in the schools or nearby to the schools, and there's a 70-30 partnership. Proceeds from that they will earn while it goes back into the schools to reduce the demand on the budget, right? So that's how other countries have been pivoting, because there is not necessarily the budget space everywhere all the time to react to the demands of inflation.
So you say, is it that the ministry is considering
So
that
we are
similar?
looking at that. World Food Program is working with us to see how we can bring the technology also in managing the nutrition program in our schools, where we source our products, how we can get ready done products for the canteen, or we eat from the soil, things like that. So we are learning through the international conversations. We'll be replicating some of those best practices. But the budgetary demands, it's a reality. But it's not a question I can answer at this time.
All right, Mr. Wright, how has it been going in terms of nutrition at your schools and your principals?
Well, the only thing is that we have the policy, but what is happening, because many of the students really don't have it, they still go for the sweet drinks, they still go for the kinds of things. And then what we have are the vendors who provide what these students like versus what the school is. So the school is regulated, but there's an unregulated sector out there that provides. I mean, the students simply just save. And in the evening they go out and they do whatever. And as I'm hearing somebody say, they're cheaper too. So the fact is that even some of these companies actually are charging a premium for the food that is healthy. And that's something I think government policy has to look at, to assist in getting that kind of thing sorted. Because as soon as it becomes healthy food, it's priced because it's healthy, because in their mind people are going after that. That's something I think that we need to look at.
Ms. Tyson, you had a quick response?
Yes, I don't know how many of us saw the feature on Mona Primary School where they have put in school gardening, and those gardens supply the canteen. They have a smoothie bar, and the children are buying into it. It can be done. We need to be innovative and
Explore it more with the other schools.
Yep.
All right, good. Javon, you have another question there?
Yes, so our next question comes to us from the Acting Public Relations Officer for Region 6 for the National Parents Teachers Association, Mrs. Shauna Mcfarlane Sutherland.
Good night, everyone. How are you doing? I am so glad to be here. My question is, it actually costs an average of $80K to educate our children in Jamaica. It takes, the government will maybe pay $17K and $2K for part students. What is it that we as Jamaicans that are paying educational tax, can you tell us as Jamaicans where our funds go? How is it applied? How is it granted? How is it to educate and mobilize us as Jamaicans to see our 2030 vision and to educate our children more than we are right here, sitting down right here in studio today?
All right, thanks, Mr. Sutherland. Dr. Troop, how is that funds being spent?
Well, that's a big one, Herman, but the truth is the government of Jamaica really spends a significant sum on education. In fact, we get $119 billion of the taxes that are collected. That is what we use to run the education system. 82% of that is really subvention. It's really about the human capital, really about the staffing. And the rest of that is used for the programs. We have a rhetoric of 17 and 19,000, but it's really not absolutely correct. We do have direct funding and we have indirect funding to our schools. But if you were to work that out in totality, there is no school, if you were to add everything that we put into the operation of school, that is getting less than 140,000 per child. When you look at the staffing for the school, we do the regular grants, which is worked out at the 17 and 19,000. We do ICT grants. That's not included in that regular grant. We do STEM grants. That's not included there. If we are going to ask the schools to make their procure their own furniture, we give them a furniture grant. That's not included there. We give a maintenance grant. It may not be ideal, but there are additional funding that we provide to the schools that is not included in the $17,000, $19,000 ratio that we have always been talking about. So when we look at the bigger picture, and each school will look differently because schools get different resources. Some schools will have coaches while others will not. That's an additional human support that we have to compensate for. And so it's a range, and we're going to put that information into the public space. We're going to publish that data. We're going to show what goes into each school and what it means per child. In the overall picture.
And that will be published.
And that will be published.
All right, good. I have to move quickly through. I'll take another question from the floor. Javon, who do you have there?
Yes, we have Mr. Eton McNamee. So he's asking a question regarding infant and primary schools.
Okay.
Well, it's something really, good night everybody, it's something really that I think should be brought into the mix. I've heard the compensation review being mentioned. I know politicians, and I am wary that amidst the massive migration, I am not hearing anybody telling us, hold strain, something is coming. So I have no faith in the compensation review that it is going to be any better for us and helping us to stay. So what will be there for us to stay?
Troop? Dr. Troop. Dr. Troop. Dr. Troop.
That's a big one. But, you know, I know Mr. McNamee, and he's one of our principals, and he's familiar with the compensation review, and information coming out of that conversation has been sent to the Jamaica Teachers Association. You know, they have reviewed what was submitted for consideration. They have provided some feedback and some other suggestions that, you know, were accommodated, and that information, from what I have heard, was shared with the JT and should be shared with the teachers. I know they'll do their rounds and they'll come up with their consensus and go back to the Ministry of Finance.
All right,
but from what we were told, nobody will be worse off, and that's what I can say for our teachers at this time.
All right, we're almost out of time. I'm going to go to your final comments. I'll start with you, Tyson.
Oh, well, back to my mantra. We must deal with our family, our parenting, our homes, in order for us to have students who are coming to school ready to learn. And as one of my teachers used to say, we need to produce students who are ready to live and ready to live with.
Okay.
And sometimes I wonder what is happening in our country. We need to go back and deal with the homes.
All right. Ms. Harrison?
Coupled with the foundation being attended to, our schools need to be properly resourced. The learning condition of the student is the working condition of the teacher. And so we need our schools to be effectively resourced so the teachers can execute their duties in like manner.
Okay, got to move it along right away. Thanks a lot. Right?
We just hope as principals that we'll have a ministry that is working with what is happening on the ground, and we don't get the speeches and then what is happening on the ground is not really there.
Okay. Final comment with you, Dr. Troop. No disconnect. What are we doing?
Colleague, I just want to encourage our principals. They know we are relying on them for the start of this school year. And I'm going to encourage our parents as well to work with our schools. The partnership is very important. For every successful school in this country, it is so because the parents have given their support to the school. So we're asking for partnership, we're asking for dialogue, we're asking for understanding. You know, I've been a principal myself, and parents have come to me. I cannot contribute, and they have done their ways of contributing. They have built my furniture at my school. They have given me meat for my canteen. There are ways that parents can contribute that is not monetary. Let's work with our parents.
Work together.
Work together.
All stakeholders work together for it to work. And as we always say, it's a team, so if one person loses, we all lose. One person wins, we all win. That's it for our town hall on the education sector. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Herman Green. Good evening.
TVJ's Back to School Town Hall was brought to you by Distinction College.
Make money now with local City and Guilds and ABE endorsed certificates and Distinction College. Start new online and face-to-face classes very soon in our Make Money Now career courses.